In 1 Timothy 3 and Titus chapter 1, where we have the qualifications for a pastor, one of the things that comes up is that he's not to be a brawler. And then it specifically says, no striker. Now, even though those are the qualifications for a pastor, these are things that every Christian should be doing. Obviously, the pastor is picked from amongst the general group of Christians, but you see a lot of people falling into the trap of, whether it be through pride or losing their temper, getting into fistfights.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good story is my children. Obviously they're young. I got 8 children, all under 13. And this one time I was following my wife. She was going to another member's house and I was just right behind them. And so sure enough, I'm just driving and I noticed these arms just swinging everywhere. And I wondered to myself, what was that? Was that fighting? What in the world was going on? So then sure enough, she ends up pulling over and I walk up to the vehicle, open the doors, and I see 2 of my kids with bloody noses. And I'm thinking, whoa, what is this? Oh, hit me. No, you hit me. They both just got into a fist fight. And so, of course, I thought, look, this isn't right. It's like, hey, obviously I spanked them for it because that's not something I allow in my house for them to just get into fights for no reason. But then I explained to them, look, the big problem here, regardless of who started it, is just pride. Because only by pride cometh contention. And that's something that we need to learn early on as Christians, because if not, we can end up getting ourselves in situations where we can get physically harmed. So when it came to me teaching my kids, I sat them down and for an hour just went over pride, try to give them like the simplest definition of pride that I could think of, and also giving them the simplest definition, of humility, which that was the thing that was lacking when they got into a fist fight in the van while my wife is driving. I've heard of a teenager that ended up bumping into a guy at just a little convenience store. Well, the guy hits him in the back. The guy turns around and they start mouthing off to each other. Sure enough, the guy that got bumped into, which wasn't really in the wrong, he ends up socking the other guy and the fight is on. So they end up wrestling themselves all the way outside the convenience store. And then sure enough, when they get up, hey, the one that ended up just pushing the guy in the back, who actually, it was kind of his fault, he ends up just getting a gun pulled on him and the guys get shot in the stomach. But why? What was the problem? The problem wasn't that the guy was in any danger or defending himself. It was just pure pride.
And it just started with something stupid. Literally,
Absolutely.
One guy bumping into another.
That's all that
was. And then it just keeps escalating. And I think of the verse that says, behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth.
Absolutely.
And just that little spark of just bumping into somebody. Next thing you know, guns are drawn.
Because all it takes is talking to the wrong person, mouthing off to the wrong person. And this can cause you to end up in the hospital like that 18-year-old or that teenager I spoke about. All he had to do was say, I'm sorry, man, I didn't mean to bump into you. But instead, he mouths off to the guy socks him in the face, they get into a wrestling match, and then sure enough, they get up, and the guy puts a gun on him and puts a couple of bullets in his chest, ends up in the ICU, and he'll never be the same again. But it all could have been avoided if all he had was a little humility and just said the simple words, I'm sorry, and just try to be a peacemaker.
A soft answer turneth away wrath.
Absolutely.
And what if it wasn't even your fault? Is it going to hurt to just say sorry anyway? Just
Absolutely
to
not. Absolutely not. It's not going to hurt at all. You should always just be the humble individual if you can, because that's the thing that's going to get these things solved right away. It's just a simple, I'm sorry. That'll fix it before you even know it.
So let's go through some practical situations, okay? Somebody gets offended by you. Let's say you cut them off in traffic, or let's say you bump into them in the convenience store, like that story. If I accidentally offend someone by bumping them or cutting them off in traffic, and they get angry and blow up at me, how should I react to that?
Well, Christ told us to turn the other cheek. In other words, just walk away. And that happened to me one time when I was working for Cox Communications. I did my best just to be considerate one day, and I was just looking for a spot where I can park that I felt like, hey, nobody owns this spot. So then I ended up going to this apartment complex, and so I ended up seeing the spot where it even had an overhead cover, but it was basically broken. It looked like it can fall on you at any time. But I feel like, hey, this is probably why it doesn't have a number, because all the spots seem to have an apartment number. So I figured maybe the manager just whited it out so nobody parks there. So I decided to park there because I had a beat up van. I didn't care if it caved in. I just want to get the job done and just go home. Well, I went inside the customer's house, came out, and as I'm going to my vehicle, I hear somebody yelling in the background, hey, you. And I thought, no way is he talking to me, but I turn around and the guy points right at me. He's like, hey, you. Me? It's like, yeah, you. And then he starts kind of waving his arm and saying, hey, these spots, they're all taken. You're in my spot. And the guy had a Mercedes-Benz, and I'm thinking, man, I would never park my Benz in that spot. But he literally comes up to me, and he says, you need to move your car right now. And I have my tools with me, and I'm like, oh, no problem, man. I'm sorry about that. And I don't think he heard me say that, but I was just trying to apologize and walk away. But literally, he came right up to me, and he gets up to me to where he can almost touch me with his nose. And he says, "You know what?" And he just starts, saying bad things to me. He's like, "Just, you know what? Blankety blank you." And I just said, "Whoa!" He was up in my face, and I'm thinking this guy's about to swing at me. And he had a tank top. You could tell he was muscular, so he definitely had some confidence that he could fight. And I literally just said, "Look, man, I'm sorry." He said, "Get your car, move it out of my way." And I just kept saying, "Look, I'm serious. I'm absolutely sorry. I didn't mean to do that." And I got in my car and moved it away. Well, then I went to go do cable, and I'm sitting outside the customer's house. It seemed like the box cable for the apartment complex was next to my customer, and I'm just working on it. And then all of a sudden, a door opens, and I could see from my side somebody comes out. So I quickly kind of looked over, and right away I noticed that it was the guy that was in my face earlier. And I was thinking to myself, no stinking way. What are the odds? He lives right next to my customer. And as I'm sitting there, I could tell he's walking in my direction. Next thing you know, he socks me in the back.
Wow.
He just hits me right in the back. And I'm thinking, no way. And when I looked up, he just looks at me and he says, "Hey, man, earlier, I just want to apologize for that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, man. I've been having a bad day." And I'm like, "No problem." And he's like, "Are we cool?" And I'm like, "We're cool." And then he literally just said, "Sorry about that, man." And he left. And that was about it. And even when he came back, I'm still working outside. He looks at me, I look at him, and he's like, "Hey, hey." And he just, was cool.
But don't you think that there are some people who just they go around just showing how tough they are? You probably saw this in the military. We see it all the time in high schools and everything, where people just have to show how tough they are, and they're constantly talking about, you know, I can kick his butt, and my daddy was a boxer, and I'm going to kick your butt, and just kind of showing how tough they are all the time, like they have something to prove, and maybe they're overcompensating.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mistake they can make is that I can take this guy. You don't know what that guy has on him. You don't know if that guy's a black belt in any type of martial arts. But even then, be careful with the guy who's skinny, who looks like he's weak, and has a big mouth. He's either really good at martial arts or he has a weapon. Like that one kid that got shot in the stomach or in the chest. They either have a weapon or they have their buddies right around the corner.
Mhm.
And I've seen guys mouth off and their buddy comes around and hits them with a bottle. And they're out cold. And we're picking them up off the ground, trying to keep things cool. And even if it doesn't happen in the military that often, it happens all over the place.
Well, as a pastor myself, this is really important to me to stay qualified and make sure that I'm not a brawler, that I'm not a striker. So I made a decision a long time ago that if certain things happened, I would not fight. If someone shoves me physically, somebody just physically shoves me hard, I will not hit them. I will not fight. I will turn the other cheek and walk away. Or if somebody slaps me across the face with their open hand, I'm going to walk away. Now, like you said, I believe in self-defense. If somebody actually balled their fist and punched me in the face, or really, you know, put me in danger, pulled a knife, pulled a gun, they're actually throwing real punches, then there's a real danger. But and I know from growing up, when somebody just shoves you, it's more just about hurting your pride. It's more about ego. It's more about just making a point than actually trying to harm you. Or if somebody slaps you with their open palm, it's more about humiliating you. Look, I've had people spit in my face, literally, just even out soul winning, or just in my job as a pastor. I've had people slap me in the face out soul winning. I've had people shove me. I've had somebody spit on me. One time, this is kind of an extreme example, I was talking to this old man on his porch, and I was standing in front of one of those really thin glass windows, the single pane, and I kid you not, this guy shoves me into the window, and the window broke. So I got shoved it. But here's the thing. What if I would have just said, "Oh, well, he started it. He shoved me."
Right.
What if I would have just pulled back and just socked that guy in the face? Well, here's the thing. Then the story would have been Pastor Anderson goes around beating up older men. Or Pastor Anderson goes out soul winning. He just screams and yells. And pretty soon, if they don't listen, he just beats them down. Is that the kind of reputation that I want to have? Because guess what? Even if you're 100% in the right, you still might get blamed for a fight. And so therefore, the best thing you could do is to avoid a fight. And thank God, over the last 20 years of my life, I've never been in a fist fight during that time, because if somebody shoved me or slapped me or pushed me, I just turned the other cheek like the Christ commanded us to do. Now, like I said, if there was a real danger, I'll respond to it. Now, you used to be in the military, and John the Baptist had something specifically to say to those in the military.
That's right. He told soldiers to be content with their wages and to do violence to no man.
When it comes to violence, I think about the first four letters, violence. It's sort of like violate.
First time you see the word violence is in Genesis, and it says that the whole earth was filled with violence. And that's why God destroyed the earth. So of course God hates it. That's why he flooded the whole world. He killed off who knows how many people because they were just harming each other in the days of Noah, and he flooded the whole world and started all over again. So God does hate a violent person. And who wouldn't? Harming innocent people, that's not something that's good. That's something evil. It's wicked. So as Christians, we need to know that right away, that what? Violence is not two guys, practicing self-defense, doing karate in a dojo or whatever the case may be. And I remember, as far as I can go, listening to Jehovah's Witness telling me how it's wrong to participate in karate tournaments, to participate in self-defense classes. When it says violence, it's talking about you hurting innocent people. So we should be people that have compassion in our hearts, that don't want to do harm, we want to do good.
So, what do you think the Bible means when it says no striker?
So we shouldn't be the person that's considered, hey, this guy's a hothead, can't control his temper, because the Bible says not to have anything to do with them, because they're just going to get you in trouble. You're going to become just like them, an angry individual. But that's not who we should be as Christians. We should be peacemakers, not people that are ready to strike. Like the Bible says, don't be a brawler, don't be a striker. And that's the biggest problem these days, is that people, are confused about that subject, because the word striker makes you think you're striking someone. And I'm thinking to myself, it's sinful to hit someone. And so I was confused about it. And I got the brawler part really quick. It's like, okay, these are people that get into fist fights, and just common sense is not a good thing to get into fist fights. You can get hurt physically. The striker part confused me a little bit.
In Psalms, it says that the Lord teaches my hands to war and my fingers to fight. That's why I don't think it's wrong, like you said, to train in karate, judo, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever. Well, and don't you think that most conflicts can be avoided, and that most of them are just a result of just pride or just people being quick to anger?
And what is the root reason? Well, the Bible tells us what it is: pride. Only by pride cometh contention. So it's a great lesson to learn. It's a great fundamental, to work on our pride, to be peacemakers, because that's what God wants us to be. And not just that, but don't lose your cool. Don't harm innocent people. So that's what violence is. It's just harming innocent people. Right.
And so at the end of the day, yeah, we could pick a fight with the wrong person. We could blow off our mouth to the wrong person and get our rear ends handed to us. But more importantly than the consequences of our actions is the fact that we don't want God to be displeased with us. And if we're going to be a godly Christian with whom he is well pleased, we've got to be peaceful. And the Bible says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
That's right.